are here today with Tiffany Westrich, and she is the founder and CEO of the International Autoimmune Arthritis Movement. She's also a professor and a speaker, and she's organized virtual conferences herself in her own history. So we are delighted to have her here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am very honored to be our presenter for Invisible Illness Awareness Week, something that is very near and dear to my heart. So again, many thanks for having me, and I hope that I'm able to shed some light on what I think is a very serious subject for those who are dealing with this type of disease.
Tiffany, what is your experience with invisible illness, and what exactly has influenced you?
Okay. I will then start with a little bit of my background and why I chose this topic to discuss today. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 37. Prior to this, I was an athlete. I mean, I went bowled, I went hiking, I played volleyball on the beach, I was kickboxing. Oh my, and I can throw, or used to be able to throw, a very mean football, by the way. So you name it, if it was sports, I was doing it. And that was kind of my identity. I was this tomboy, sort of. So becoming physically incapable to do that was very strange. And especially nobody really knew what I had because I didn't look sick, so they kept saying, well, you know, maybe it's you injured yourself. You are very athletic. And so I have my own path that I've dealt with the invisibility of having a very real disease, and it has such a psychological impact, especially when you have lived your life and have created an identity, and then that identity is taken away. And you are left asking the question, who am I now? I'm not really sure. And that takes a really big mental struggle. So not only are you dealing with physical and probably dealing with trying to explain to people that you really are sick, but now you have this sort of identity crisis on top of it. So I have my rationale is mainly that I am a patient that has dealt with it myself, but in addition, I also run a nonprofit organization, the International Autoimmune Arthritis Movement. IAM is how the acronym is pronounced, and we are 100% patients and those affected with autoimmune arthritis run and created. So I hear about this topic often, not only from the volunteers, but from followers, from members, from people that we communicate with on a regular basis. It's one of the number one struggles that I have found that people deal with when dealing with an invisible illness. So I will try not to use autoimmune arthritis specific, because I know there are a lot of invisible diseases out there. So I'm going to try to stay away from specifically talking about my illness specifically and relate it to all of us, everyone dealing with this invisible illness issue, because it does affect the mental state regardless of what disease that you are dealing with. So, and then lastly, I was a college teacher for 8 years and had to retire in my 30s because I couldn't physically do it anymore. And of course, the students couldn't quite understand that because I don't look sick, right? So if you don't look sick, then why would you not be able to physically do this anymore? That didn't make sense to them. So I've toggled my experience with teaching and public speaking, and I'm utilizing it into a way that I think might be able to help others. So that is a little bit about my background with invisible illness and why I wanted to speak to you today.
Now, you talk about the psychological issues that are paired with the physical challenges. Can you go into these mental states in more detail for us?
Well, let me start here, I guess, with the presentation part of it. I have done this before. Again, I curtailed it a little bit more to my disease specifically, but I'm going to embrace it into the whole chronic illness in general, an invisible illness. So I call this whole phenomenon the who am I now? The who am I now phenomenon, because it does become an identity question. Who am I now? And in order to deal with the current struggle of who am I now, and to be able to emotionally cope with this and find solutions to combat this issue, you really have to go back in time, back to, well, if I'm asking myself, who am I now, then who was I then? So once we can figure out how we got to this point of even questioning it, we'll be able to come to a better resolve. So in saying that, I'm going to start with the question, who was I then? Okay, so let's go back. Let's go back all the way to the beginning. Very beginning, little baby. You're born, you're so cute, right? And you're a baby. You have no identity role other than I'm a baby, I need to eat and cry and go to the bathroom and be held. I mean, there's not a lot that you have as far as who am I. So your parents end up telling you who you are, right? They start, oh, my kid is gonna be president, or is gonna be this sports star, or a mathematician, or whatever label that they give us, right? So we start out with this who was I then, with whatever role or identity our parents give us. And you know, we get older and we start to understand communication, and we start to get praised for things that we do well. I know personally I was very good at art, and my earliest memory of knowing I was good at art was my parents telling me how good at art I was. I mean, I didn't have any frame of reference, so I started realizing, wow, I'm an artist. So that was one of my earliest identifications, one of my earliest roles of who I was. As we get even older, we begin to know what kind of things we like to play with. And, you know, are you a tomboy? Are you a girly girl? So, or boy, either way. So we start to we start to identify, become a role. We start to become a personality. So who was I then really becomes forming our identity. We begin to even maybe think about what we want to be when we grow up. And I know I wanted to be a veterinarian, and because I loved animals. And then someone said, you know, you don't just play with dogs and cats all day. And I went, maybe I don't want to be a veterinarian. So then I started shifting my identity. But we do start to kind of create who we want to be based on the things that we like even as a child. So then we grow older. And I call that going from forming our identity to becoming our identity. Because now we know what we like. We know we like art or sports or whatever it is. So then we become that, and it's almost like a label. I went to school for design the first time. I also went back for business, but the first time I went for design, for art. And, you know, I became this label. I am an artist. And what happens is then all of a sudden I develop a condition that I can't quite do that type of work with my hands anymore. Well, I am an artist. Now what? If I don't have that identity, my whole world starts to shake, right? You start to panic a little bit. I don't know who I am. That label's gone. I was also kickboxing. Can't kickbox with rheumatoid arthritis, now can we? So what was I going to do? I was an athlete. I was an artist. There's two things that were major in my life that I knew all the way back from the beginning that I was, and those were just taken away from me. But what's even worse, what adds a different level to it, the psychological level, is twofold. You are dealing with the struggle of who am I, but you also are trying to explain it to other people in your life when you look completely normal. And that is extremely hard to deal with, especially when you have a significant other, family, friends, and they don't understand why you can't do these things anymore because you look fine. And so there's a lot that's going on when you're talking about becoming this identity. And so that's the third step that I say is losing our identity. So you've got this idea of who you are, you've become who you are, and then you lose who you are. And that's really what we want to address today, is this who am I now? I've lost my identity, who am I now? And this is kind of when you need to stop, when you get to this point. Don't keep going in the cycle. Don't keep questioning yourself. I don't know what to do, because this is when depression starts to set in. So this is really where we need to stop and focus more on the psychological issues. But first step is going back. Go back, figure out what your roles are, or what your roles were, based on your likes, your interests, your job. And then the next step is to just stop, and we're going to analyze that. So that's kind of the introduction on leading us up to how we're going to hopefully solve a little bit of this issue.
Well, that's really interesting. So you've learned that part of why patients struggle psychologically has a lot to do with a struggle in identity. Can you continue to explain to us why you stated to stop here and focus?
Well, like I said, the problem is really that we have an identity and we've lost our identity. This is when you need to stop, because you didn't really lose your identity. That's what I want to get the point across today. It is so easy to get depressed and to feel confused and to be frustrated when you are dealing with this identity crisis. So the most important thing is to stop the depression. If you need to talk to somebody, there's nothing wrong with that. There's also plenty of support groups online that you can talk with. That's one outlet. Obviously, talk to somebody. Talk to somebody who can listen, who can understand you. But the other thing that I want to focus on specifically is how you can help yourself. Okay, how are you going to be able to get past this and move on and be a happy, productive person when you're asking yourself, I don't know who I am. And the key is go back. Okay, go back to the original forming our identity and becoming our identity. Go back to those. Okay, make yourself a list if you have to. Okay, I would write down, I became an artist, I was an athlete, I was a teacher, I was a public speaker. Okay, I was all of those things. Does it mean that I'm not all of those things anymore? No. That's the key. You are still all of the things you've always been. You just have to figure out a different way of utilizing those interests and utilizing those skills. That's the next step. Okay, so talk to somebody. That's very important to get your emotions out. But in addition, get a piece of paper out, write down. Okay, for example, I loved sports. I can't do sports anymore. That was such a huge part of my life, but what did I like about the sports? It doesn't necessarily mean that, okay, well, now I'll just watch sports. No, that's not what I liked about playing the sport. I didn't like watching the people running around the bases. I didn't like watching the other players catch the ball that I was throwing. That's not what I liked about the sport. What I liked about it was the teamwork. I liked the aggressiveness. I liked the challenge. All of those things are me. I just toggled those into sports. So write on your piece of paper what it was about that role that made you you. Okay? And let's do another one. I was an artist. Drawing specifically is my forte. Can't draw all the time anymore. I still do, but I can't do it like I like to. What was it about that I enjoyed? It was a creative outlet. It was being able to take my ideas and turn them into something beautiful. Okay? I can still do that. There are, thank goodness, right now there are programs on the computer you can kind of draw with your fingers just by touching the screen. So I can still get that outlet. It's exactly the same, no. But I can do it. I can find things that are creative, that I can physically do. So again, the key is you need to first understand yourself. And by doing that, the key is figure out what those things were that you did, that you feel you lost. Why did you like doing them? And then think of a way that you can take that and turn it into something else. With the sports, I said I loved the challenge, and I loved the team. Well, started a nonprofit, and now I get to work with a team, and I get to take on challenges. I am not by any way, shape, or form suggesting you go out and start a nonprofit. But I am suggesting you find something else that fits that need. Okay, so once you fulfill that need and you really kind of identify, it's not the roles that I've created that make me me. I'm still me. You just need to find different ways of releasing those interests. Okay, so that's step number one. And talking to someone or talking to peer groups or support groups. That's step number two, interchangeably. Until you figure that out, that is the key in order to then communicating with other people. Because if you're frustrated and you don't know who you are, then you're really going to have problems communicating to others, especially with an invisible illness. If you can't own and you're confused, believe me, they're going to be confused. So
once you begin to empower yourself, that's a gateway to teaching others. Can you elaborate on this for us?
Stop here and focus. Okay, so that's a good question. How would you begin to empower yourself and teach others? Well, like I said, the first thing you really need to understand yourself. So please, before you even try to in-depth discuss your invisible illness with others and expect them to really understand, just like anything in life, you have to understand it first. So please, talk to someone, get a piece of paper out, get a journal, and start asking yourself. Do some self-searching and answer the question, who am I? You know the answer, but you need to figure out that first, why you liked the interest that you feel you lost. Socializing, for example, I'll put one more in there. I really loved to cook and to socialize, and I'm too tired to do it half the time. It doesn't mean that I'm not still a social person and that I don't still like to cook, but instead I might have to take what I like, the socializing, the cooking, and turn it into possibly a home dinner party, but I'm not cooking. My friends need to bring over a little something, something, and I don't have to do anything, right? So I'm the host, I'm still socializing, but I'm not physically cooking, they're taking care of it, and we still have that group interaction. So, you know, sometimes you are too tired to do things, but there are ways to go around still making that work for you. So the first thing is understanding yourself. The second thing is, now I think once you're ready, once you understand your new roles, then it's time to start really explaining this to other people. Now the thing is that people like to see, right? People want to believe what they see, and that's our problem. You don't necessarily see our diseases all of the time. So one way is to go to a site that is specifically for your disease. Like, for example, for ours, we would go to the American College of Rheumatology, a reputable, not a general website, a nonprofit, a medical organization, reputable, and find some literature specifically on your disease. That's first. Give them some hardcore education. If you have a disease that does a lot of attacking on the inside, a lot of damage, like maybe it's cell interaction that are attacking each other, like an autoimmune disease, get some physical photos of the body's cells and say, hey, my cells are messing with me. You don't see my cells, but they're freaking out on the inside. So as simple as that sounds, just understanding it's not what you see here, it's what's on the inside. That can help. So get some documentation. On my bio, I actually have a document that I've been told has helped a lot of people with autoimmune arthritis. So it is geared to autoimmune arthritis, but if you look at it, I think it could help you maybe create your own similar document depending on what disease you have. And it literally is called "What Does Autoimmune Arthritis Feel Like?" And it was designed for people who need to tell somebody, hey, I really am sick. This is really what it feels like. And I've used examples of what they would understand. For example, there's a photo of a person crashing off of a bike, and they're all hurt, and we all have been there where we've fallen and we feel achy, and the next day, it hurts, and you may even walk with a splint for a day. That's the kind of thing you want to tell somebody. Hey, remember when you fell last year and you were on crutches? That is how we describe our pain. It feels sprained, it feels broken, whatever it is that you are experiencing. Find the thing that they can relate to. Something else that has in that document, if you have a disease that causes major fatigue, flu-like symptoms, people have had the flu, right? They've been really, really tired, but it's more than just tired. I have an example of like running a marathon. If they've ever run a marathon, if they've ever hiked up a mountain, I mean, just ask them, man, what is the most exhausted you've ever been? Physically exhausted. Maybe they moved a 3-bedroom house, and at the end they go, I'm so tired. Use that. So take personal experiences and that they can understand and they can relate to. So again, if you want to check out that document, there is a link to it on my bio. It's just 2 pages, I think, 1 or 2 pages long. But maybe you can use it as a stepping stone to create your own ideas of, hey, this person would understand what I feel like if they could relate it to themselves. So step 1, figure out who you are, right? Step 2, once you figure out who you are, then you can start explaining it. And that really is from documentation from credible sources, such as a nonprofit, where they can see things, pictures work well, relate it to something they can relate it to, something that they can understand, a feeling that they have felt before. And that's what I feel like. So once they can start really identifying it, the whole me too, oh, me too, I understand that, you will get somewhere. Okay, so that is really key.
And then once you gain this insight, you can begin to teach it to others. So what comes next?
Okay. Yes, the first step is learning the identity that you created, and then accepting the identity is not gone. It's not gone. You just figure out how you're going to adjust it to fit your life. Teach others, and I gave you a couple examples of that. But the next step would then be, instead of turn that question of, well, who am I now, into who I am now. You can do that. You just remember, you are still you. Don't get caught up in the who I was. Concentrate on the who I am, who I will be. You need to make the most of who you are and use it as a time of hope, of rediscovering yourself. And maybe you'll find even new interests. I say this a lot, and I just really, if you're going to remember something out of this presentation today, other than the advice on how to get past this identity crisis and some tips on teaching others when you have invisible illness, is just remember that sometimes life doesn't turn out the way you planned. Sometimes it's better. I was diagnosed at 37, and I thought, what now? I was an athlete. I was an artist. I was a teacher. I was a public speaker. I was all these things. Couldn't do them anymore. That's not the way I planned it. But you know what else I didn't plan? I didn't plan to be sitting here right now talking to all of you wonderful people. I didn't plan to be the CEO of a global nonprofit. I met some of the most wonderful people because of this journey, and my life is better for it. So find your blessings, find yourself, and you'll find your happiness. And I think that about sums it up.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, Tiffany. This has been quite informative, and I know encouraging for people to understand a little bit more about what they're dealing with.
Well, thank you for having me. Please, any questions anybody has, I am available. I am more than happy to speak with any of you. You also have my contact information on my bio, email, Twitter, Facebook. If you want to learn more about our nonprofit, those links are on there as well. So please, I am here to help. I have dedicated my life to this, and again, just thank you so much for this opportunity. I enjoyed it. Thank you.